I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Today we're reading from the Gospel of John, chapter 6, and let's focus on verses 63 through 71. The Spirit is the one who gives life. The flesh doesn't help at all. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and are life. But there are some among you who don't believe. For Jesus knew from the beginning those who would not believe and the one who would betray him. And he said, "This is why I told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted to him by the Father." And from that moment, many of his disciples turned back and no longer accompanied him. Therefore, Jesus said to the 12, "You don't want to go away too, do you?" And Simon Peter answered, "Lord, who will we go to? For you have the words of eternal life. And we have come to believe and know that you are the Holy One of God." And Jesus replied to them, "Didn't I choose you, the 12, and yet one of you is the devil?" And he was referring to Judas, Simon Iscariot's son, the one who was one of the 12, because he was going to betray him. Once again, John chapter 6, verses 63 through 71. Now, when most people think of Jesus' disciples, they only consider the 12, but in actuality, there were at times thousands of people following him around. Remember, after feeding 5,000 people, many of those people sought out Jesus the very next day. And Jesus took this occasion to compare the bread that he had provided the day before with the bread or the manna which Moses had provided. And his point being that earthly bread cannot eternally sustain life. And then Jesus identifies himself as the bread of life, different from Moses' manna. Interesting, he was born in Bethlehem. And in Hebrew, the word Bethlehem translates house of bread. And this is a message that was offensive and it was arrogant to many of the Jews because Jesus was elevating himself above Moses. Beyond miraculously imparting earthly bread, Jesus personified the spiritual bread. Jesus communicated that the Spirit gives life. Therefore, eternal life can only be obtained spiritually. Salvation cannot be obtained by earthly means. In short, salvation is by God's grace and not through works of the law, which is the essence of Ephesians 2, 8 and 9, which says, "For it is by grace that we are saved through faith, and that not of ourselves, but it is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast." You know, there is something at the core of a man which makes him want to earn his salvation. And that something is called pride. It is in direct opposition to receiving salvation by God's grace. And this is true for us today. And it was true in Jesus' day. So much so that when the crowds heard this teaching, they left him. You see, there is a difference between following Jesus and simply following him around. Many will affiliate themselves with Jesus, but all the while they refuse to prostrate themselves before him. And in the end, Jesus is either Lord of all or he is not Lord at all. And by the way, he is Lord, and we should worship him as such. I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Check us out at groundworksministries.com.